The human skin is not merely a protective barrier against the elements, it is a biological billboard for hundreds of thousands of years. The condition of a potential mate's skin has served as a primary indicator of health, youth, and genetic fitness. It is one of the very first data points the male brain processes when assessing mate value in the sexual marketplace. But in the modern dating landscape, that biological billboard has undergone a radical transformation. It is now frequently covered in ink. We currently live in a cultural moment that demands unconditional acceptance of all lifestyle choices. You are told repeatedly that tattoos are simply artistic self-expression, a celebration of unique individuality, or a harmless fashion statement. If you question the implications of body art, you're quickly labelled as judgmental, controlling, or old-fashioned. However, your biological instincts often tell a different, more conflicting story. You might feel a visceral, primal attraction to the edginess of a tattooed woman, driven by a natural male desire for novelty and high-stimulation experiences. Yet, simultaneously, a quiet alarm bell often rings in the back of your mind regarding long-term stability, family planning, and emotional volatility. This cognitive dissonance exists for a valid evolutionary reason. Evolutionary psychology and behavioral economics suggest that permanent body modification is almost never just about aesthetics. It is a form of signaling. It transmits high-fidelity information about pain tolerance, time preference, impulse control, and past trauma. Today, we are not discussing the morality of tattoos or the character of the women who wear them. We are discussing the statistical probability of relationship success. Based on clinical data and evolutionary patterns, we will dissect the 11 risks associated with dating women who have significant body art. In biology, this is called an honest signal. It is a costly display that is difficult to fake. By the end of this analysis, you will understand whether that signal is an invitation or a warning. To accurately diagnose the dating dynamics involved here, we must strip away modern social conditioning and look at the underlying mechanisms of signaling theory and life history strategies. In the realm of evolutionary biology, nothing is accidental. Every trait, every behavior, and every modification serves a communicative purpose in the mating market. First, let us distinguish between the historical context of tattooing and the modern manifestation. Historically, in tribal societies from the Polynesians to the Celts, tattoos were marks of conformity and integration. They were rites of passage that signaled a man or woman had adhered to the strict social norms of the tribe, endured the pain of the process, and was now a reliable, integrated member of the collective. In that context, ink signaled stability, predictability, and adherence to tradition. In the modern Western context, however, the signal has inverted. Tattoos are no longer about blending into a collective tradition. They are primarily tools for individual differentiation and attention acquisition. This brings us to the core concept of this analysis: life history theory. Life history theory is a framework used in evolutionary psychology to understand how organisms allocate their limited resources, time, energy, and effort towards survival and reproduction. Humans generally fall somewhere on a spectrum between slow life history and fast life history strategies. Individuals with a slow life history strategy focus on the long term. They prioritize somatic maintenance, physical health, delay gratification, accumulate resources, and invest heavily in a small number of high-quality offspring. Their behaviors are characterized by caution, planning, and stability. They view their bodies as long-term assets to be preserved. Conversely, individuals with a fast life history strategy operate with a mindset that the future is uncertain or dangerous. Therefore, the biological imperative is to live for the present, seek immediate gratification, and engage in high-risk behaviors to maximize short-term reproductive opportunities. They engage in what economists call future discounting. They value $1 today much more than $2 next week. Tattoos, particularly extensive or impulsive ones, are statistically correlated with markers of a fast life history strategy. Why? Because a tattoo is a permanent modification made in response to a temporary emotional state or aesthetic preference. It represents a decision where the immediate desire for expression or dopamine overrides the consideration of long-term consequences, such as how the skin will age, or how the signal will be perceived in professional or maternal contexts decades later. When you observe a woman with significant ink, you are observing a phenotype that suggests a higher tolerance for risk, and a lower threshold for future-oriented anxiety. This is not a moral judgment, it is a behavioral observation. The act of getting tattooed involves overcoming the body's natural aversion to pain and the psychological barrier of permanence. This requires a specific neurochemical profile, often one with lower sensitivity to punishment and higher sensitivity to reward. Furthermore, we must address the edgy paradox. Men are frequently drawn to these women precisely because they signal this fast life strategy. The tattoos signal a break from the boring, predictable norms. They promise excitement, novelty, and potentially higher sexual availability, which we will discuss in the risk section. However, the paradox creates a trap. The very traits that make her exciting for a short-term encounter, impulsivity, high sensation seeking, and emotional intensity, are the exact traits that destabilize a long-term relationship. You cannot selectively extract the fun part of the fast life history strategy while ignoring the chaotic baggage that comes with it. The ink on the skin is often the external map of the internal chaos. Risk number 1: low conscientiousness and impulsivity. In the Big Five personality model, which is the gold standard in modern psychology, conscientiousness is the trait most strongly correlated with life success, marital stability, and longevity. It measures the ability to plan, the capacity for self-discipline, and the tendency to consider long-term consequences before acting. Multiple studies have found a significant negative correlation between having tattoos and the trait of conscientiousness. When you date a woman with extensive tattoos, you are often engaging with someone who possesses high impulsivity. The act of tattooing is, by definition, a permanent solution to a temporary feeling. It is the decision to alter one's biological appearance forever, based on an aesthetic preference or emotional state that exists in the now. This betrays a fundamental inability to delay gratification or accurately forecast future regret. If a woman cannot consider how a neck tattoo or a sleeve will impact her professional options or social standing 10 years down the line, how likely is she to possess the foresight required for long-term relationship management? A successful marriage requires decades of boring, routine maintenance and the suppression of immediate impulses for the greater good of the family unit. A mind that prioritizes immediate self-expression over long-term viability is a mind that struggles with the mundane reality of commitment. The ink is often a receipt for a purchase made on impulse, and this impulsive purchasing habit rarely stops at the skin. It often extends to finances, emotional outburst, and life decision. Risk. Number 2, high novelty seeking and boredom, susceptibility. This brings us to the neurochemistry of the tattooed brain. Psychologists use the sensation-seeking scale to measure an individual's need for varied, novel, and complex sensations and experiences. High sensation seekers are willing to take physical and social risks to attain these experiences. There is a robust link between body modification and high scores on this scale. While high novelty seeking can make a woman incredibly exciting in the early stages of dating, she is adventurous, spontaneous, and intense. It is a distinct liability for long-term retention. The biological reality of a long-term relationship is that the initial dopamine spike fades after the honeymoon phase, usually between 12 to 18 months. When the chemical thrill subsides, the relationship requires stability to survive. A woman who relies on the intense sensory input of getting tattooed, the adrenaline, the endorphins, the pain-pleasure cycle, is often neurologically wired to reject boredom. She craves the next high. When the relationship becomes stable and predictable, her brain may interpret that peace as stagnation. This leads to the manufacturing of drama to recreate the unnecessary spike in stimulation. You will find that she may sabotage a perfectly peaceful Tuesday just to feel something intense. The tattoo is physical evidence that she requires external stimuli to feel real or alive, and a quiet domestic life is rarely enough to feed that hunger. Risk number 3, unresolved trauma and control mechanisms. We must approach this third risk with clinical detachment but brutal honesty. A significant percentage of body modification is rooted in the psychology of trauma, specifically adverse childhood experiences ACEs, for many women, particularly those with heavy or aggressive ink. The tattoo is not art, it is armor. Psychologically, tattooing can serve as a coping mechanism for past abuse or a lack of bodily autonomy in childhood. By voluntarily inflicting pain upon herself and permanently marking her skin, she is reclaiming ownership of her body. It is a declaration: I control the pain I feel, and I control how I am seen. While this is a valid survival strategy for the individual, it presents a major risk for the partner. If the tattoos are a manifestation of unresolved trauma, you are not just dating the woman, you are dating her ghosts. This dynamic often leads to a defensive attachment style. She may be hyper-vigilant, quick to perceive attacks where there are none, or use her appearance to push people away before they can get close enough to hurt her. The ink serves as a barrier, a way to harden the exterior because the interior is fragile. In a relationship, this manifests as difficulty with vulnerability. You may find that no matter how much safety you provide, she continues to fight a war that ended years ago. The tough girl aesthetic is often a high-maintenance defense system guarding a wounded core that you are not equipped to fix. Risk number 4. Unrestricted sociosexual orientation. In evolutionary psychology, we use the sociosexual orientation inventory (SOI) to measure an individual's willingness to engage in sexual activity without emotional commitment. Individuals are classified as either restricted, requiring emotional bonding before sex, or unrestricted, comfortable with casual sex. Multiple studies, including research published in the journal Personality and Individual Differences, have established a positive correlation between the number of tattoos a woman possesses and an unrestricted sociosexual orientation. The data indicates that women with extensive body art tend to report a higher number of lifetime sexual partners, and a younger age of first sexual intercourse compared to their non-tattooed counterparts. From a biological imperative standpoint, this is critical data for a man seeking paternity certainty and relationship longevity. An unrestricted sociosexual orientation suggests a mating strategy prioritized for variety rather than fidelity. While this might make the woman highly approachable and sexually adventurous in the short term, it statistically lowers the probability of her pair bonding successfully for decades. The tattoos often serve as a signaling mechanism to the mating market that she is open for business, or liberated from traditional sexual constraints. If you are looking for a loyal, long-term partner, you are betting against the statistical house when you ignore this correlation. Risk number 5. High neuroticism and rebellion. Neuroticism is another dimension of the Big 5 personality traits, characterized by a tendency toward anxiety, depression, self-doubt, and other negative feelings. Research has frequently linked body modification with higher levels of neuroticism. Why is this the case? We must look at the function of the tattoo. For many, the physical pain of the needle acts as a regulator for emotional pain. It is a way to externalize internal chaos. A woman who scores high in neuroticism often experiences her emotions as overwhelming and uncontrollable. The tattoo provides a locus of control, a tangible, physical anchor in a storm of abstract emotions. Furthermore, this is often coupled with a trait known as low agreeableness, specifically manifesting as rebellion. If a woman covers her sin in ink, she is explicitly rejecting the norms of her parents' generation and the broader traditional society. While rebellion is often romanticized as independence, in a relationship context, it often manifests as unnecessary conflict. A partner who defines her identity through opposition to norms is likely to define her relationship dynamics through opposition to your leadership or boundaries. If her default mode is rebellion against authority, and you attempt to establish structure in the relationship, you become the authority she must rebel against. Risk. Number 6. External locus of control and narcissism. There is a distinct narcissistic component to turning one's body into a public exhibit. This relates to the psychological concept of the external locus of control, the belief that one's value or destiny is determined by outside forces rather than internal character. Visible tattoos, especially in high-visibility areas like the chest, neck, or hands, are inherently attention-seeking devices. They act as super stimuli that force the observer to look. This betrays a high need for external validation. The logic follows: I need you to look at me to feel seen, but I will control exactly what you see. This creates a tiring dynamic known as the "look at me, don't judge me" double bind. She invites the male gaze through provocative or lead body art, but then becomes hostile when that gaze brings judgment or categorization. This suggests a fragile ego that requires constant feeding attention, but cannot handle the digestion social feedback. In a long-term relationship, a woman who requires constant external validation from strangers to maintain her self-esteem is a high-risk investment. Her emotional stability is outsourced to the public. leaving you with little control over her happiness. Risk number 7. Correlation with risk-taking behaviors. Behavioral traits rarely exist in isolation. They cluster together. The risk-taking phenotype is a cluster of behaviors that include sensation-seeking, impulsivity, and disregard for safety. Statistical analysis often shows a high comorbidity between having multiple tattoos and other risk-taking behaviors, including smoking, heavy alcohol consumption, and substance usage. A study by French researcher Nicolas Guéguen found that individuals with tattoos were more likely to consume alcohol at risky levels. This is not to say every woman with a tattoo is an alcoholic. However, it indicates a lower threshold for bodily sanctity. If a person is willing to introduce toxic ink into their dermis for aesthetic reasons, the psychological barrier to introducing other toxins, nicotine, ethanol, narcotics, is often lower. This speaks to a general lack of protective instinct towards one's own biological vessel. As a man looking for a mother to your future children, you must ask if she treats her own body with a fast and loose philosophy. How will she treat the health and safety of your offspring? The pattern of high risk, high reward is thrilling for a weekend, but terrifying for a lifetime. Risk number 8. Correlation with cluster B, personality disorders. In clinical psychology, cluster B personality disorders are characterized by dramatic, overly emotional, or unpredictable thinking or behavior. This cluster includes borderline personality disorder (BPD), histrionic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. There is a persistent documented overlap between extensive body modification and the diagnosis of these disorders, particularly borderline personality disorder. One of the hallmark symptoms of BPD is an unstable sense of self and identity disturbance. A woman suffering from this often feels empty inside and uses her physical appearance to construct an identity that feels substantial. The tattoo becomes a substitute for a stable personality. Furthermore, BPD is associated with impulsive behavior and self-damaging acts. In many cases, the pain of the tattoo needle serves a similar function to cutting or self-harm. It is a way to regulate intense emotional dysregulation through physical sensation. When you date a woman with the cluster B marker, you're entering a relationship characterized by the cycle of idealization and devaluation. You will be the hero one moment and the villain the next. The chaos painted on her skin is often a direct reflection of the chaos in her mind. While not every tattooed woman has a personality disorder, the presence of extensive, dark or violent imagery is a clinical red flag that suggests a turbulent internal landscape you cannot stabilize with love alone. Risk number 9. Short-term mating strategy signaling. Evolutionary psychology distinguishes between short-term mating strategies hookups, flings, and long-term mating strategies commitment, marriage. Signals are used to attract specific types of mates. Clear, unblemished skin is a universal, cross-cultural signal of youth, health, and genetic quality attributes highly valued for long-term reproductive success. By covering this skin, a woman is often unconsciously signaling a shift away from the wholesome long-term archetype towards a more sexualized, short-term archetype. She is signaling to a specific demographic of men, often those who are themselves high-risk, high testosterone, and short-term oriented the bad boy archetype. If a woman has curated her appearance to attract men looking for a good time, rather than a long time, her behavioral patterns will align with that market. She becomes accustomed to the attention of men who value novelty over stability. If you enter her life as a stable provider looking for a wife, you're a mismatch for the signal she is broadcasting. You're trying to buy a long-term bond in a marketplace she has set up for short-term transactions. The risk here is that she may eventually resent the boredom of stability because her entire aesthetic was designed to attract chaos. Risk number 10, the damaged goods perception and mate value. We must address the uncomfortable concept of marketplace value. In the sexual marketplace, value is determined by demand. Whether it is politically correct or not, the vast majority of men, particularly high-status men looking for a mother to their children, possess a subconscious preference for purity and natural beauty. Skin free of markings signals a lack of baggage. It implies that the woman has not felt the need to alter her natural state to be enough. Conversely, heavy tattooing can trigger a subconscious damaged goods heuristic in the male brain. It suggests that the woman has been through wars, emotional or social, and carries the scars to prove it. While she may view her tattoos as a diary of her life journey, the biological male brain often reads them as warning signs of wear and tear. In economic terms, extensive tattoos are a depreciation of the asset. They limit her pool of potential high-quality suitors to those who either fetishize the look or are willing to overlook it. By dating her, you're accepting a partner whose market value is arguably lower than her natural potential, often accompanied by the defensiveness that comes from knowing she is judged for it. Risk number 11, future discounting and poor executive function. Finally, the 11th risk brings us back to the concept of time. Future discounting is the cognitive bias where people value immediate rewards much more than future rewards. A tattoo is the ultimate example of future discounting. It prioritizes the aesthetic desire of the 25-year-old self over the dignity and preferences of the 50, 60 or 70-year-old self. A woman who covers her body in ink has demonstrated a failure to empathize with her future self. She cannot visualize or does not care that a chest piece or neck tattoo will look radically different on aged, sagging skin. This inability to project into the future is a failure of executive function, the part of the brain responsible for planning and foresight. In a marriage, you need a partner who can envision the future clearly. You need someone who can save money for a retirement that is 30 years away, who can make health choices today that prevent disease tomorrow. If she could not even protect her own skin from the short-sighted whims of her youth, can you trust her to protect the long-term interests of your family estate? The ink is a permanent monument to a moment of short-sightedness. It is crucial to pause here and apply a necessary layer of nuance. In behavioral economics and psychology, we deal with probabilities, not certainties. Not every woman with a tattoo is a borderline personality with a chaotic past, just as not every smoker gets lung cancer. To act as if these correlations are absolute laws is intellectually dishonest. We must distinguish between the signal and the noise. First, not all ink is created equal. The location, size, and content of the tattoo matter immensely in this calculus. There is a massive psychological difference between a woman who has a small, concealable symbol on her ankle or shoulder, perhaps commemorating a lost loved one, and a woman with a sleeve of skulls, chaotic geometry, or aggressive slogans covering her neck and chest. The former often represents a sentimental, contained expression that does not seek to disrupt her social integration. The latter is a loud signal. It screams for attention and actively challenges social norms. A woman who tattoos her face, neck, or hands is engaging in a much higher level of future discounting and social defiance than a woman with a butterfly on her hip. One is a whisper, the other is a shout. The more visible and aggressive the ink, the stronger the correlation with the risk factors we have discussed. Secondly, we must acknowledge cultural context. In certain subcultures or professions such as the artistic, musical, or culinary worlds, tattoos are a norm of the trade rather than a sign of deviance. In these specific environments, not having tattoos might actually be the deviant signal. However, unless you are specifically looking for a partner within those high volatility subcultures, the general market rules still apply. Finally, there are exceptions to the rule. There are women who got tattooed during a brief rebellious phase in their early 20s, have since matured, developed high conscientiousness, and now view their ink as a relic of a past self rather than a current identity. The key differentiator is how she relates to them now. Does she regret them? Does she cover them up in professional settings? Or does she continue to add more as she approaches her 30s and 40s? The former suggests growth, the latter suggests arrested development. We are looking for patterns, not improved exceptions. When you ignore the pattern because you hope you found the exception, you are gambling. And in the casino of relationships, the house usually wins. So, how do you navigate this marketplace? You do not need to adopt a blanket policy of rejecting every woman with a drop of ink. Instead, you must apply a rigorous vetting framework. In business, this is called due diligence. In dating, it is called protecting your future. Step 1. Interrogate the origin story. Do not ask, do you like your tattoos? Ask, what was the specific reason you got this one at that specific time? Listen carefully to the answer. You are looking for the why. If the answer is, I was bored, I was drunk, my friends were doing it, or I just wanted to feel something. You have confirmed risk number 1, impulsivity, and risk number 2, sensation seeking. If the answer is deeply personal, thought out, and commemorative, the risk is lower. You are differentiating between a mindless consumer and a thoughtful individual. Step 2. Assess the current velocity. Is the ink dry, or is the canvas still under construction? There is a massive difference between a woman who got a tattoo at 19 and has not added another one in 10 years, and a woman who is 28 and planning her next sleeve next month. The former made a mistake, the latter is actively living the lifestyle. If she is constantly planning the next modification, her focus is on the superficial self, not on building a shared reality with you. Step 3. The cross-reference check. Do not look at the skin in isolation. Look for the risk cluster. Does she have tattoos and debt tattoos and a history of unstable relationships, tattoos and a high body count? If the tattoos are the only outlier in an otherwise high conscientiousness, conservative life, you might have found an exception. But if the tattoos are just one data point in a scatterplot of chaos, believe the pattern. Your goal is to prioritize the mind over the skin. If the mind is chaotic, the skin's just the warning label. Read it. Biology is ruthless. It does not care about your feelings, political correctness, or modern social trends. It cares about survival, reproduction, and the transmission of genetic material. The instincts you feel, the hesitation when you see a neck tattoo, or the thrill when you see a lower back tattoo are there for a reason. They are ancient algorithms running in your modern brain. Tattoos are not just ink, they are data. They are visible indicators of internal psychological states, past decisions, and future time preferences. You can choose to ignore this data in the name of being open-minded, but you cannot ignore the consequences that follow. The market is flooded with signals. Your job is to decode them. Don't let the artwork on the packaging distract you from the quality of the product inside. Always prioritize the software over the hardware. Always prioritize mind before skin. If you have ignored these red flags in the past and paid the price, or if you found the exception to the rule, share your story in the comments below. Let's document the reality. Subscribe for more clinical analysis of the dating market.